You were fine. You'll do good. This is a good practice for you. You get your career and your percent anyways.
Okay.
All right, we're live. All right, everyone, thank you for coming. Really appreciate it. We had an original guest speaker, which had to cancel at the last minute, so we are very fortunate. Aaron Medina, one of our former students and a software developer, has agreed to come in and speak to you folks about his experience going through the learning process, going through Tech Academy, and also, getting hired and also working as approved. So with that, let's give a warm welcome to Aaron. So we're going to keep it a little bit informal today because he literally had less than 12 hours to prepare for this. I am going to basically help facilitate and ask questions to help him guide him through kind of his experience through that process. Feel free to raise your hands if you have any questions or you want him to elaborate on a thing. This is going to be really informal and just a good opportunity for you to get another perspective on what it's like to go from a totally different industry and then train and then get hired into this process. And then also what's it like to actually work in the industry as well. There's many different experiences and Aaron's going to share his. So with that, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of your genesis story, so to speak?
Sure. Hi everybody.
Hi.
Hi Aaron. Hello everyone.
Hi everyone. Nice to meet you all. So a little bit about me. I'm from Southern California originally, Orange County area. I moved up here for college, George Fox University down in Newburgh, and got my psychology degree. And did that for 2 months and burnt out immediately. So then I was like, well, gotta find something new. So I was a valet for a little over a year at an inn down there, and then, funny enough, my wife, who's got her mathematics degree, she was interning somewhere where she was doing databasing, data entry, and doing tons of SQL scripts and setting up databases for her company. And I looked over her shoulder one day and I was like, "What's that?" She's like, "You don't want to know. It's boring." Long story short, I started learning SQL. I went backwards and started learning web development from there, and then I realized I needed somebody to point me in the right direction. So I started asking around and getting ideas of what I should do, where I should go. Somebody said, "You should check out the boot camps in Portland. They're pretty awesome." And then I found this one, and I actually saw one of my former professors he recommended this place to me, actually. His name's Brent Wilson from George Fox University, really cool guy. And I emailed him, and he's like, "Yeah, you won't get a better bang for your buck, so I'd highly recommend it," and I ended up here.
Cool, yeah. I've actually had Brent Wilson speak a number of times about basically computer securities, and in fact, I'll be speaking in January on 2 sessions. And it's already on our meetup page as well. So what was it about the software that got you excited about it? I mean, you saw your wife's working on SQL. What was the trigger? Was it the inner joins? Join it together.
Oh yeah, all the fun types of joins and weird things you can do with them. I don't know. It was just really cool for me to see, plugging in some stuff into a computer. On occasion, creating something out of nothing. Automating just what, I would imagine just doing things one at a time, hand by hand, making tons of errors and proofreading it, or I can write something that I can reuse over and over and over again, essentially creating my own tools, and I thought that was the coolest idea ever. So I figured, well, if I can just do this, if I learned all this with SQL, what can I do with all the other languages and tools out there, all the other frameworks? And so that's really what drew me in. I just saw limitless potential.
So what was your favorite topic here at the school when you were going through? What was your favorite class? You're like, wow, I really love this.
I really enjoyed, do you still do the live project as a course?
Yes.
The live project course, I don't know how many of you are in that or looking forward to that. It is the biggest kick in the butt and biggest learning experience you'll have, hands down. Should I elaborate on why?
Yeah, sure, yeah, go for it.
For me, it was really just a chance to play around, break some things, figure out why. Why did that happen when I changed a couple lines of code in a startup file? Why did that break everything? And it was ended up being full stack, so I got to learn like how the UI interacts with the back end, and I just got a full spectrum of all the pieces I was learning finally got put together. And so I really enjoyed that, and just really getting my hands on some real stuff instead of a to-do list. Which I'm sure we've all done.
Definitely. So, what are some of the core skills that you learned here at the school that's helped you out in your current role?
Probably discipline. I think most people here signed up to do like 20, 40 hours a week, right? Is that still?
Yep, still.
Yeah, so about 20 to 40 hours a week. I learned a lot of discipline through that, because when I did my research on other code schools, I think you should always, do your research on seeing what else is out there, what other people are offering, what their processes are, what you can even take away from that and add to your own. What I learned is that a lot of other code schools, they make you sign a contract saying you're going to do like 60 to 80 hours a week of learning. Or at least that's the research I found when I started it. And so I was like, well, if they're doing 60 to 80, and I'm doing 40 here, that's what I committed to. I was like, well, with all the learning that I'm doing now, 40 hours a week, how much more could I learn by putting an extra couple hours a day in, then add a couple more hours? And what I started realizing is that the more disciplined I was about putting the extra hours in to investing in myself and investing in my own skills, it really paid off in the end. I was able to come into class, or come into this room, immediately, like from the moment one of the teachers were here, I'd be like, hey, I found this last night, I didn't understand why this API broke, I didn't understand why is this called the controller, what does it do, what is it really doing behind the scenes. I was able to kind of come in prepared, so I wouldn't be wasting their time and I wouldn't be wasting mine.
So, the breakdown of your hours is how many hours in class and how many hours working on your own?
It was kind of a mix for me. Some weeks, because depending on how often my wife was actually home, I'd be doing stuff from home. So if she was home on a normal week, I'd probably do 4 hours at home a night and about 8 hours here. And then if she was she's a volleyball coach, so if she was at a volleyball camp, I'd be here 12 to 14 hours. I'm not saying that everybody has to do that, but for me, I needed to keep that constant flow going. And so I wanted the least amount of interruptions. I wanted the most amount of extra time that I could be investing in other areas that I was interested in.
What's your job title right now, and what was your job title when you finished
As a direct support professional, so imagine families that have disabled kids or they're disabled themselves. They would contract with our company, they wouldn't have to pay the company anything, and they would send us in to, if they were a kid, we'd work on their kids' social skills or whatever their counselor was having them work on. So, one case I was working on, he couldn't talk, he couldn't, whenever he got stimulated, he would actually, he'd start freaking out, so we'd work on helping him with sensory overloads and stuff like that. So, another kid his parents didn't know how to deal with one of his social disorders, and that's why we were there to help integrate them in the family.
Is that called caregiver sometimes? Would that be, or is that?
I've never heard of it called as a caregiver. I thought that was actually something else, but the title that I saw everywhere was direct support professional, but really it was just... am I allowed to say that on camera?
I wouldn't.
Well,
Let's go ahead and move forward on more related to the topic.
And what's your job title right now?
Associate engineer. Yeah.
All right, so you bring a good point. You know, a lot of hours you put into the program. You know, when they start the school, as most boot camp. I mean, who here is actually? I mean, so boot camp actually refers to the military term boot camp in regards to a really intensive training period. I've been through the Marine Corps boot camp. I've been through this boot camp. I like this one a lot better than the Marine Corps boot camp. Just from personal experience. But the intent of the boot camp here is to be an intensive process. And so we ask students to a minimum of 40 hours, but we highly encourage students to put more into it. Because the more you learn during this process, the more pain you go through now during this and getting through some of those barriers, the better off and more ready you're going to be when you get to that employer and you're trying to solve problems. Are you going to know everything? No, you're not. We try to train to get you to the point where you have a solid foundation. We can't teach you everything in 15 weeks, but we can give you the strong fundamentals to succeed. So with that being said, what's one thing that you've learned now that you wish you had learned here at the school from your current experience as a career? Because you've been there somewhat 7 months now.
Yeah, I think this is 7.
Yeah. So what's one thing you thought? Well, I think it's cool if I learned that.
One thing I wish I'd learned here. I wish I'd learned a little bit more about clean code concepts. How many of you have heard of the book Clean Code? How many of you read it? If you want to learn how to write clean code, it's written in Java, but it can be taken and learned from across all coding everywhere. You don't have to like all of it. You can definitely take pieces that you like and don't like. That's what our team did. We took pieces we liked and left pieces we didn't. But the amount of learning that I got from that book, that I wish I learned that here, because the first thing they told me is you need to clean up your code. And that book just outlines just so many great ideas and illustrations of what not clean code is and what clean code is and why you want clean code. I won't spoil everything about what?
Who wrote it? The book? Bob Martin.
Thank you.
So can you give us an example of one just high-level piece that you thought, oh, it's pretty cool, that you had then improved yourself?
Reusable components. So specifically for using dependence. Does anybody know what dependency injection is? It's okay if you don't. I don't know how to explain it, but essentially it makes it easier to just put pieces in that all you really need to know about is just they do this one thing kind of abstractly, and you can go program that separately, completely separately. It doesn't need to know where it's being used. It just needs to know how to do the job you're saying it's going to do. Sorry if that was a little confusing, but that was probably one of the biggest pieces I took out of it. Instead of just using a bunch of private functions, for those of us in C#, all of us like loving private functions. That gets messy really quick.
You and I met for coffee a while back, and you talked about that book a little bit. And one of the things that I thought was interesting is it talked about consistency as well, and within a team and naming conventions. And so the book covers that part of it as well.
Oh yeah.
Really making sure that you're in tune with the team, whatever the kind of like when in Rome, do as the Romans, so to speak. Making sure that you're in. And why is that important? From your experience as a crew.
Yeah, from my experience, it's really important to understand how your team codes. Because if I come in and put my own pattern in, there's tons and tons of different patterns you can write your code in. I don't think I'm allowed to say what mine is, but there's tons of patterns that you can use. And if I'm coming in and doing a 3-layered approach, where I've got a logic layer and 2 other layers below that, and then somebody else does a logic layer that that only uses logic to decide what strategies to use, and then really it's actually multiple services being implemented under that. there's no consistency, I can't just go into your code and start drilling down into things because I'll get lost really easy. If I know exactly how you're going to code it, then I can say with pretty accurate certainty, oh, he named this function with this naming convention. That probably means that if I drill into it, it's going to be at the very bottom. It's going to be talking to all of the third-party libraries. It's going to be handling this and this and this for me. That's why, yeah, it's really important to kind of get a hand of your culture. Yeah.
It's really cool. So you didn't have coding experience. You go to this academy, you get a job. So that's really, really cool. And it sounds like you really like your job. So how did you get that job?
I annoyed them a lot.
Yeah, no. And how long did it take from you graduated this academy to get the job? How long was it finding the job?
I didn't really know about the job I actually ended up getting. I was applying for a higher level position, and I ended up annoying them enough that they gave me a shot at an interview, and they said, you know, your skills aren't quite there, but we're going to put, how about this?
Nice. That's so cool.
And I know you said you
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, so what is the primary product that you're working on that's approved?
the one I'm working on or what is approved does?
Either. Both.
The one I work on is it's called eDiscovery. Our actual product is called Digital Discovery Pro. What it does at a higher level, it allows you to review document sets. So if you took like a zip file that had a bunch of emails in it or documents in it that you needed to quickly search through and group together for something like a lawsuit, you can just upload it to our servers. Our servers would do some pre-processing on it, make them searchable, and then you can run search queries on your data sets of hundreds of thousands to millions of documents in a few seconds. I like to say it's like Google search, but for document sets.
So perhaps you could tell us a little more about the steps you took once you left the academy and you were looking for an opportunity. Did you talk with different companies? Did you go to different meetups? Did you work with recruiters? Did you work with job boards? What steps did you take?
I took the steps, let's see, when I graduated here, I still just kept throwing out a bunch of resumes everywhere. I talked to, I think, 15 recruiters. That didn't help me at all. I know that helped some people. It did not help me. That's all I'm saying. I know that in some cases, people have been very, very successful with recruiters. Just not me. And it came down to, I got so tired of the fact that I sent out over 250 applications, and only, even following up with almost all of those applications with a phone call or a letter, only I think I had a total of 3 interviews.
That's a lot.
Really?
Yes.
For 250?
Really good.
Yes.
Oh, all right. I guess I did something right. I thought I was off the scale.
You are. The other end of the scale.
Right.
And out of those 3 interviews, one of them didn't go well at all. He asked me about my understanding of complex data structures and things that we don't learn here, and they're very hard to really get a grasp on your own without somebody who's been there already.
Curious, an example of one of these complex data structures that you think that you can talk about?
I honestly don't remember. He was just like, what do you know about this? How would you do it? And like, what kind of data structures would you set up?
The reason why I ask is because often for a complex model, and we ask them who it is, and they're like, I know that, you know.
Oh yeah.
Hey, so you definitely didn't know this one.
Nope. Yeah, he was. Yeah. Where was I?
Talk about your job, things you did in your job search.
Oh yeah. So that was one of them. It just turned out that I was very much not qualified for it. Another one, I was in competition with another, not this code school, but another boot camp person, and I was told he beat me out. I don't actually know. I don't know. I heard I didn't get the job, and I was like, thank you so much for your time. Yeah, then I was on my way. So, and then the third one was approved. I followed up the first time, and they told me they didn't want any more junior developers. And a couple months later, they made it so you couldn't actually resubmit applications once you submitted one. So I actually sent them in letters, and finally they were like, you should sit down with this guy, see if he knows what he's doing, and see if he qualifies for at least this entry level position. And so lots of persistence are kind of the steps I took, and I tried a lot of different things.
And I'll add to that, and Aaron's right, there's certain strategies you'll try that just won't work for any given person. We had many students very successful technical recruiters because they can oftentimes be that connection to a contract or a temporary gig. We had a student down in Las Vegas. She had interviewed with 5 separate companies, and the 5th company wanted a computer science degree. She didn't have one, so she actually asked me, say, hey, should I apply? I was like, well, the worst that's going to happen, they're going to say no. And they interviewed her. The recruiting firm interviewed her. They liked her. They presented her. She interviewed with the company. They brought her on board. 6 months later, the company liked her and bought out her contract from a recruiting firm. So recruiters can be an asset, but it's like anything else. If you put all your eggs in one basket, it's going to be easy to be frustrated and wonder why am I going to be doing it. You have to kind of diversify. Make sure your LinkedIn's up to date. Make sure your GitHub's up to date. Make sure you practice your interviews, your soft skill, your technical interviews. Make sure you're coding on a regular basis and you're uploading to GitHub. If you're not coding on a regular basis, how do they know if you're a coder or not? And so, play with your code. Submitting the resumes. It's an unpleasant process, but it's necessary to get the name out there. And going to meetups. And I know for a fact that Aaron went and did the tech crawl that happened every September. I was there. I remember literally being down at the bottom of the Bancorp building, and Aaron's like, "Yeah, I just came from New Relic. It's great." Da, 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 da. And then, I just came from Jama Software, and he was talking about I miss New Relic and all the great food. I missed it like 5 minutes. Oh, you miss it too? Yeah. But networking is another aspect. You have to go in with a job search, as a holistic approach. It's not going to be, it's going to be easy. I'm just going to do this one thing. I'm going to get a job. I literally had one student 2 years ago, literally didn't do any resumes, she did one resume, didn't do any meetups. She literally walked into the company, interviewed, they liked her, and they hired her, and she was making $60,000 a year as a junior web developer, and that's like winning the lottery. She was very intelligent, she was adept, she already had a degree in some other, I think it was biology, but she was driven, and they just liked her. So, part of it's just chance. Nobody likes to hear the word that is chance. I'll give you an experience for me. A number of years ago, I was interviewing with Salesforce. Interviewed 3 times, got turned down for the position. Then I basically interviewed again. Or they called me up and said, "Hey, we got another position, different department, same position but different department." Interviewed with that team 4 different interviews. And I got turned down for that position after 4. And one of those interviews was a 6-hour interview. Then 2 weeks later, I said, "Hey, the first team you interviewed for, they got a new manager, but they got a new position. You were number 2 in the first round of the first position, and do you want to do it?" I said, "Great, sure, I'll do it." Interview with the director, and I interviewed with the manager, and then they put a hiring freeze on the company. So, but it does, but it's a learning experience. I got a lot of valuable information about the interview process and getting through. If you can get an interview, the average person will go through 5 separate companies before they get hired, and that's across all industries. And what separates the person that succeeds, especially in this difficult industry of breaking into, is the person that perseveres, consistently putting out 250 resumes, consistently building code, because Aaron was still building code while he was searching. And I think you volunteered and helped out with us as well. even afterwards, building out some of our code. So being engaged and active in that process, shows that you're actually still moving forward. So act like and be a developer. So I
And
would.
did that live project that you did here, did that help you get that job too? By doing that?
No, it was actually, it took me about, for my graduation date, I think it took me October to
December, January.
May.
Yeah.
That's when I got the job offer.
Okay, so that makes another question. Did the skills you learned in the live project and the teamwork and the things that you did together that help you in your job today?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I told you, the course you should look forward to the most is the live project.
So, I'd like to go back to a point you mentioned
Right.
about recruiters.
Mm-hmm.
There are recruiters, and theoretically, recruiters are people who help you find opportunities and get jobs. In reality, there are recruiters and there are recruiters. Some are simply staffing companies, and they have two buckets. They have a bucket of people who want jobs, and they have a bucket of employers who want people. And they go through, and sometimes they just randomly pick two and match them and say, yeah, send this guy off to that opportunity. But a good recruiter will take more time to get to know you and will look at a position, and a position might say, yeah, we want a computer science degree and 3 years experience with Java, and 2 years experience with JavaScript, and the recruiter might look at you and say, this is still a good match for you. And you'll say, but I don't have JavaScript. And the recruiter will say, we know this company, we know what they do, we think they should look at you. So the printed rules don't always apply. You shouldn't always believe everything that's printed. Now, there are some companies that say, no, you have to have JavaScript, you have to have Java, you have to have computer science, and we don't want to see you if you don't have those. There are companies that do that. And there are recruiters who do that.
Yeah.
But not all.
Right. Again, don't put all your eggs in one basket. And I agree, you should develop a relationship with your recruiter. You probably shouldn't have 15 recruiters. You should interview 2 or 3 and have them engage with you.
Well, it's okay to go and talk to 15.
Right.
And then pick 3.
Right.
Michael,
Yeah.
when I was here listening to the mayor with Eric,
Yeah.
the mayor was late, so Eric was giving a spiel about
Right.
Your boss, about recruiters and things like that. And they mentioned one recruiter that really works with junior developers well in Portland. Which recruiting firm was that? Eric said that. Do you remember that name?
I don't remember. It's been
Okay,
4 months.
So there's like one. So not all recruiting firms are looking to work with junior developers. Is that right?
Well,
That's what I heard from that speech from Eric.
let me elaborate a little bit on recruiters. Recruiters are like brokers. They get paid. You don't pay a fee for recruiters, so it costs you nothing to actually work with a recruiter. Where the recruiter makes their money is by getting you placed in a job. Some of the jobs will actually pay an hourly rate, and so they'll get a percentage. So if you get paid $25, it's costing that recruiting firm $35, or the company $35 an hour, or $40 an hour, and the recruiter gets a portion of that. So for a recruiter is, and let's face it, we all want to make more money and work less. So for a recruiter, if you go into their office and you don't have a GitHub, you don't have a LinkedIn, you haven't prepared yourself, you're going to be a lot more work for them to get you up to speed in order for you to present to somebody. So when you're interviewing with somebody, the cost-benefit analysis on their side of the spectrum is they'd rather have people that are motivated, that listen, and if they give you some advice, you act on that advice and you move forward, and you're more likely to get submitted. If you walk in there and you've got nothing on your GitHub and you're like, oh yeah, I just finished this boot camp, to them they're saying, okay, how much time do I want to spend on this person who's not even motivated to do their own GitHub? And so for recruiters are good for those that are motivated to help themselves. They're not going to carry you across the finish line because it costs them time. If they spend 40 hours on you and they get an X amount of dollars, they get $500, they've just lost money on you. So recruiters are going to be there to build a rapport with you, see what value you bring to the table. how motivated you are, and they'll go to bat for you and submit your name if you're a good asset for them, because they don't want to spend 100 hours on you and then only make $500. So it's a cold reality, but they also can be a great asset for those that are motivated to help themselves. So, because they can get you into those. You know, another way you can do it is you got networking, you got meetups. Recruiters have jobs that you will not see on the open market. So there is some advantages to having and building rapport with them. And if they tell you to do something, do it. You know, unless you feel it's just way not worth your time. So let's get back to Aaron here, who's graciously giving us time. So you've already answered how many interviews you've done and stuff like that. Once you were hired, what was the onboarding and starting the first couple of weeks like for you as approved? Kind of how did they help you transition from being a junior developer into the position?
They actually had I consider him a senior developer at this point because he's amazing. But he oversaw everybody that was coming on and actually onboarded us in a sense. He knew we didn't know how they coded, and he was willing to work with us. Was willing to willing for us to ask him questions. Yeah.
So did you sit next to him? Did you sit across the hall and talk with him every day, or?
I had the unfortunate event of having my back to him, and he sat right next to me, so he could see my screen all the time. I had a buddy who sat across from me, and apparently he'd get up sometimes, look at my screen, and go. But he was really close proximity. He was there for us to ask questions whenever we wanted, if we tried to solve it on our own first, and we weren't afraid to make mistakes. Because they set it up very, very well for it to be really, really hard for us to break something. When we were there for the first 2 weeks, our code reviews went through 3 to 4 people. Now they go through 1 person. So they took an extra precaution to actually make sure that we didn't push a bug to production. And that's another thing. We were like, oh, so what practice applications are you going to have us write? He was like, what do you mean? You're here to work. So if you're going to learn and you're going to work, you're going to do both at the same time. So we've categorized what we consider starter tasks for you, and pick one you like, go for it. If you get stuck for too long, come get me and we'll tackle it together. If I think it's harder than we labeled it, then I'll pull it from you and I'll give it to one of the mid-level developers. And then you'll just go on to a new one. And that slow onboarding process, we were taking what would take a normal developer who understood their system, maybe they could probably do it in less than an hour if you include the code review and everything. It would take us sometimes a day to 2 days to 3 days to do it. Did you have a question?
No. Well, you bring up a good point. Not every company is that good at onboarding and mentoring. And I had an opportunity to meet with your coworker, Garrett Guevara, as well, and he talked about the fact that they had several people coming on board at the same time as you.
Yep.
And they were trying to create a process that allowed you to succeed.
Yep.
When you get hired in the industry, you may be working for a company that doesn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to be ready to have a little bit of intestinal fortitude, ready to keep study nights and weekends to upgrade your skill sets in that specific field. Aaron brings up a good point. There's the implementation. There's learning a language like Python or Java or C#, learning the actual language. And then there's the implementation of a company in that language. So the company may choose how they're going to do their variables and their constants and their functions and their processes that relate to their industry. So, learning that, is something you have to really be focused on, and being ready to go for it. But you don't always have that kind of support. It's It's not the common. So,
Yeah.
How long was it when you were in that phase of learning, taking
Learning,
times
learn,
as long to
like-
do something?
like learning by doing
Yeah.
instead of just practicing. So we did pair programming for the first 2 weeks, and the person I paired with and we ended up picking something that they definitely didn't think was as hard as it was, and so he actually kept questioning why it took us so long. And at the end, he realized that that was something one of the mid-level developers should have been doing. And I think that ended up being like the perfect scenario for us to actually be in, because we were pair programming, we could actually bounce ideas off of each other. If one of us got frustrated, like we could actually encourage each other. If neither of us could solve it, we knew it was time to ask our senior developer. And because of how hard that first task was for us, it forced us to understand the system. We started doing our own tasks the week after we were done pairing. And after that, we were doing, I think it only took us about a month before we were doing some of the mid-level stuff. But that's also, they, like Michael was saying, they really, really tried hard to set us up for to be as successful as possible. Their goal was to not fire any of us before our 90 days, then it becomes a lot more paperwork. They told us that. They were like, our goal is to keep you here. We're going to set you up for success, but no, like, if it doesn't work out, that's fine. No hard feelings. This is really just a trial period. First 3 months, go for it. Make mistakes and learn. Yeah.
So there's another lesson in what you just described. And that lesson is about estimation and how difficult something is.
Mm-hmm.
In a structured environment like the Tech Academy here, the lessons are prepared. You know what you're getting into. Your instructors know what you're getting into. Out in the real world, this was an organization with their software, and they had this task to do. And they said, yeah, this should be good for an entry level, one of the newbies. Go through it with them.
Yeah.
Right? That was the idea. That was the estimate. But the effort was really somewhat higher.
Mm-hmm.
So out in the real world, people all the time will ask me, oh, how long is it going to take to change that thing on the screen to be blue instead of green? Or connect to a database. And the temptation is, oh, I can do that. It takes like 5 minutes. They didn't even know how big the effort was, which shows how hard it is to come up with an accurate estimate.
it's also,
We're not allowed to say it'll take 5 minutes anymore.
yeah.
So how many languages are you using now? You learned several here at Tech Academy. How many are you using in your daily basis now?
I am fortunate enough to be completely just doing one thing, C#.
Oh.
However, the team I'm a part of, we work in the cloud a lot. We use tons of cloud technologies, and we have to learn to integrate that with our app, which is a lot harder than we would like it to be sometimes. But
So it helps to be introduced to other languages as well. That's what I'm hearing you say. Is that right?
oh yeah, one of the things that I love about software development is, like, if you learn one language really, really well, like, the logic that you learned in that language isn't going to be gone when you, like, if you go from C# to JavaScript, that logic's not going to be gone. It's just going to be a little bit different syntax, and there'll be different frameworks that you're going to have to use. You're not, yeah. So I'm a huge believer in, like, learn one thing really, really, really well, as best as you can, and, like, a lot of that's going to transfer over to something else. but there is something to be said about at least getting a baseline on things like if you're doing web development, you should have a basic understanding of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. But I mean, I focus completely on C# right now.
And getting back to what you said earlier about the actual, the estimation, a lot of that is that, if somebody's been coding for a while, them also figuring out the estimation is going to be hard because they don't know what you don't know. And so that's why it's going to be really important that you're at least communicating with your own leadership team and you get hired on what your skill sets are, and so that you're able to, and you get better practice at that as time goes on, because already you've been there for what? 7 months, and you're probably better than you were when you started as far as estimating how long it took you to do a given task.
Oh yeah, and that also comes with like learning your product. I mean, if you're like, most of us are going to go and develop software for a company, and that's what they do. Like that, the software you're developing is what they sell. And sometimes the systems that you're working with are incredibly complex, and a lot of the times, from what I've heard and seen, is that nobody has completely documented what the whole structure looks like. So it takes you a lot of time just to understand where things are, how they impact things like across the board. You might touch something, in way over here, but it breaks something way over here. So like the estimation also kind of comes with just getting to know what you're working with. And obviously that takes time, it takes effort. That was one of the things I actually got on my quarterly review. My boss actually said, like, one of the things, like, you're doing a great job, but one of the things you can work on is definitely understand how all of our product works together, not just what you're working on. Because what if there's a shortcut that none of us can see, but if you had just looked out just a little bit farther, we could have taken something that is a lot of effort and made it just like a simple, really small amount of effort that wouldn't take any time at all.
How many hours of work are you working a week, and do you like a compensation? You don't have to say what it is, but do you like it? Compensated well?
I really like my compensation plan, like encompassing. I think Zapproved is a great company. They value taking care of their employees.
Is it a 40-hour work week, or are you doing more?
It fluctuates. Sometimes I'll work 40 hours. Sometimes I'm actually on call right now. So if something goes wrong, I have to fix it. So like this week, I'm probably going to be working, even with the holiday, I probably will put in about 55 hours. But sometimes I'll come in at 9 and leave at 4 and work like a 36-hour work week or 40-hour work week.
You ever stay late at night?
Yeah. When we release, we can't do it while our customers are using the product, so that would be horrible if they're doing something really, really important and we shut the whole system down. And I mean, that's not how we do it, but I exaggerate, but like typically you don't want to do that, so we do it later when they're all gone home for the day. So we do stay later. So the latest I've stayed is 2 o'clock.
Jerry?
And
you were talking about your boss said you needed to understand like how all the different pieces kind of interact with each other and how it all works as a whole. What's your process, or what do you think is a good process for understanding that? Is you click on hundreds of different code files and just stare at them, or like how do you go about doing that?
If you're lucky, like I was when I asked a similar question, it turns out that there was documentation. He had an actual flow chart of what our system looked like at a very high level. And that allowed me to just pick a system and go to its entry points, in a sense, and just look at it and get a feel for where the logic flow was. For the most part, if your code's clean enough and you just look at the logic, you should have a good understanding of what it's doing. So that's kind of how I've been doing it. But because we use a lot of cloud services, there's also things outside of our system we have to worry about.
So you talk about, you were in a job search for about 5-6 months, right?
Yeah.
So what were some of the tips that you can give the current students who haven't entered the job market? How did you stay motivated? And because that's a long time to be looking for a job, and some look more, some look less, and so it's kind of like an undefined race. You don't know when you're going to end. What did you do personally to kind of keep yourself grounded and moving forward without just like, oh, lots of water?
I think I'm okay. What did I do to stay motivated? I surrounded myself with people that were, like, for lack of a better term, they were really go-getters. I really believe in the power of association. If you associate yourself with people that wanna get out there and go get stuff done, you're likely to do the same just by being around them, feeding off of that energy. I think really looking back on it, I was hanging out with a couple other developers who were also really looking for jobs, and hung out with a lot of my friends who would encourage me and really, like, well, how many job applications do you do today, Aaron? And like, none. Well, why are we hanging out? Like, you said you needed to get this done. Go get it done. So I really associated myself with people that would do that for me and really kick me in the butt when I needed it. Did you?
So, when you were looking, did you have a daily routine or a weekly routine that you followed?
I tried, but like I said, I needed a kick in the butt sometimes, and so there were times where I would just be like, I don't even know what I'm going to do, so I'm just going to code today. That's all I'm going to do today. I'm going to code, and tomorrow I'm going to put in 3 hours of job searching and quality applications. No easy applies, just quality applications. And then I'm going to code for the rest of the day. And so I'd kind of like, I'd commit to doing something the next day, and if it was a really hard day, I would at least code. Because I knew the code wouldn't reject me. It would tell me I'm doing it wrong, but it wouldn't say that I couldn't do it anymore. So I would just keep coding, keep learning.
So you coded a lot of things like outside of Tech Academy and like separate projects and things like that while you were job searching too.
Yeah.
So what kind of projects did you work on?
I actually worked on a lot of the stuff that you guys do in your life projects. Like they're real projects that they're working on. They want them to keep progressing. They want new features on them. So I just kept coming back in a sense, and I was like, hey, I still don't think I have enough experience. Do you want to help me out with that? They were like, well, could you do this? And I was like, yeah, I can do that. So I was like, I'll commit to doing this, and then I'm going to put out more job applications. And they were like, okay. And then I'd be like, is there anything else you guys need? Like, I'd be happy to work on some more stuff. And yeah, that's kind of how I kept working on projects and adding stuff to my resume. There were a couple other things I did outside of even the Tech Academy. I can't remember who was recommending me for stuff, but anybody that was just looking for a quick web project to be spun up for anything, like, I'd give them a call and say, hey, I'm willing to like commit to this amount of time to help you get that done, and I just want the experience. And
where did you find those projects or people?
I just ask around about who you know, right?
Yeah, you can also, there's like mentorship Saturdays at Meltoad at 10 a.m. That's one good, you were there, did you?
Yeah. That's they helped fill in some of the gaps that I couldn't get answered here, so
Yeah.
they were a really great resource.
Yep. All right, so what's a typical day like for you as a proof now that you're past the, oh my gosh, how am I going to survive moment? Or are you still in the, oh my gosh, am I going to survive moment?
That's every day.
Okay.
Typical day, first thing we always do that our senior dev, when he was onboarding us, first thing he taught us to do every day is if he looked at our computer and saw any unread emails or any unread messages on our Slack channel, we would have a talk. He's like, I should never have to send you something and then walk over to you and ask you about what I just sent you. He's like, they're there for easy communication, constant communication, without breaking each other's flow. So that is the first thing I do every morning without fail before I go get a cup of coffee, before I go get a cup of water. That's the first thing I'll do. I'll always check my messages.
So you work in an office?
Yep.
You are not working remotely?
I am actually there, yeah.
You go to the office?
Yeah. I do have they allow people to work at home, but our team has committed that we can't work as well. Like, we've all decided as a team culture on the team that I developed for, as approved, we need to be in the office way more than we're not. Because we work better as a team, we communicate better, we can whiteboard together, we can problem solve together. But when we're at home remotely and you've got a lot more distractions and you get up from your computer a lot more, you don't really know if they're at their machine and actually looking at their messages, and you can't just walk up to them anymore. So the communication really degrades at that point. So we just committed as a team to not work remotely as much as possible. But things come up, and that's really all you can do sometimes.
So, a couple more questions. We'll do you first.
During your job search process, were you earning money doing other things?
Yeah, I had a small internship, and that was about it.
Yeah. Jared, you had a question first.
Yeah, how big is your team, and what are the dynamics of working together that was that like?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We're about to get a 10th person. That's one team lead. And 1, 2, 3 senior devs, 3 people at my level, and a QA, and we're getting an SDET right now, so software developer and tests. And our team dynamics are great. We actually meet. We have meetings more often than we code, which is sometimes a benefit and sometimes a negative. But the amount of communication that our team leader allows us to have. One of the things we were talking about is how hard deciding how much effort is going to go to a feature. We actually will have full 1-hour meetings deciding how much effort should go to that feature and communicating with our product owner if like, this is how expensive this feature is going to be. This is how much we as a team think this is going to be. We have daily stand-ups, which I think you guys learned in the live project. And we do planning, so we decide what features are going to go into our next iteration of stuff. And we have 3 offices, and we're all in tight quarters, so there's no excuse not to communicate. But I guess the thing I'm focusing most on is the fact that we communicate a lot. And yeah, if anybody doesn't communicate, our team leader actually talks to them about it. Says you need to communicate more, you need to be open to communicating more often. Because it's just so important. We do that more than coding.
All right, 2 more questions, and then Aaron's got to get back to work. So you had a question, then you had a question. So you first.
So my questions are regarding your internship. I'm assuming that your internship must have been technically oriented. Is that a lot of internships are only geared towards people who are currently enrolled as students? And I'm assuming also that you were not enrolled as a student. Do you have any suggestions on companies offering internships not for students, or sort of how you like that getting an internship?
How finds that internship?
We need to respect his time, so let him answer that question, and then we'll go
I
on to
mean,
his question.
My answer is gonna kind of answer both. I asked as many people as possible that I personally knew, and I won't say I got lucky because I did put the time and effort into doing that, and it paid off.
And your question?
Yeah, what version of control system are you using? How does that work?
I don't actually know if I'm allowed to share that information, unfortunately, because depending on what systems you're talking about, there are vulnerabilities. So we don't like to share where we store everything. So, sorry.
No. All right. Well, let's give a warm applause for Aaron coming in and sharing his time. And thank you for coming and joining us for the Friday Tech Talk. Before you leave, even if you're a student currently, if you could fill out a survey and share what you thought about the experience, we'd really appreciate it. It helps us make a better experience for you folks. And thanks for coming. And Aaron.
I'd love to at least shake all your hands. I mean, you guys came here, and I'd like to at least get your name and shake your hand, see how you're doing, where you're from.
Good opportunity to network. Thank you.
JT. Yeah.